This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Hey friends, and welcome. This is Felice Gerwitz, your host today. We are going to be talking about raising homeschool rock stars, and you probably have never considered the possibility that you're actually raising a homeschool rock star, but you are in for a treat today as we delve into this topic. And I'd like to thank our sponsor, and that is Now Programs. You can visit the website at nowprograms.com. They have a unique way of tackling the issue of struggling learners. And please give us a shout out on your favorite podcast app. I really appreciate that, and thank you so much. And visit our website at the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network, where you can find other wonderful podcasts that deal with many different homeschool topics. Well, the perfect homeschool path for your family can actually happen. And today I'm going to talk about it actually through a Christian lens. You know, there are many different ways that we can raise our children. And I've always thought, let's shoot for the top, okay? Where can we land? Well, that's really up to you, because I really strove to do the best I could in my homeschool. And I have to tell you, of course, that it never was as perfect as I wanted it to be, but we really worked hard at working towards some things that maybe weren't always the most popular things, but they definitely were engaging to my kids. And so we're going to discuss this today. It's really a topic that is on the minds of those who consider homeschooling, yet are really afraid to commit completely. And you may ask, well, that's me. You know, sometimes I wonder how well I'm going to do as a homeschool parent. Well, how do homeschoolers do academically? Well, I've got some things I'm going to share with you. Parents want to know this question, and they also want to know, does homeschooling really work? So we're going to look at the outcomes from test scores to real-life prep with some key points for you to consider. I'm not going to name specific curriculums, but I am going to name some principles or some styles of learning that some of the parents use in the homeschool world. And I'm going to share with you some of the ways I homeschooled my kids. For a good resource on homeschooling curriculum, you will want to check out KathyDuffyReviews.com. She does not get paid to do these reviews, and she has a wonderful website that even has a little tool on there where you can put in your learning style and your child's, and it keeps that information private just for you to access. And so you can visit her website, and I interviewed her some time ago, and I'll try to put a little note in here to put her interview that I did with her on this podcast notes so that you can check that out. But did you know that homeschoolers do excel academically? And this is one of the most asked questions by parents who wonder if homeschooling works. I worried at one point in time that my kids were going to have holes in their education, and I wondered if they would be able to keep up with their peer group, especially since I had some that were struggling learners. I had some kids that were way ahead of where they should be. And even my struggling learners were very bright kids. They just maybe couldn't read or write on grade level at that point in time. And I'm happy to share that we were able to get them all caught up during their homeschool journey. But you'll be happy to know that if they do the work and they work hard, the answer is an astounding and resounding yes. Homeschooling does work, and your kids will excel academically. Studies like the one from the National Home Education Research Institute show that homeschooling consistently score in 15 to 30 points higher on standardized tests than their public school peers, often landing in the 80th to 90th percentile. And that's just not in math or reading, it's across the board. And this is way better than certain state averages that have made the headlines in the news recently with, fourth graders that can't read. And you may wonder why homeschoolers excel. Well, some attribute it to certain methods that some homeschoolers use. For example, the classical approach that drills deep into logic and reasoning, just think Socratic method here, or the Charlotte Mason method that's rich in living books and that sparks curiosity, or unit studies. That is something our family really did a lot of, and that's a deep dive into specific topics using all senses approach with lots of hands-on learning, lots of, as Charlotte Mason called them, living books with a focus on science and history. And our library grew when we were homeschooling. We actually bought many of the books that we used because I wanted them to be available to my children. Going to the library is great. Listening to audiobooks is wonderful. But I wanted them to be surrounded with books that they could use. The main driving force, not often discussed, is that parents are directly involved in their child's education. They are right there and engaged in learning alongside their students. I have to tell you, I really disliked history, and I happen to have a daughter who is a history major. That really is a gift from God because I don't know how that happened. But I learned a lot about history and geography, another one of my weak areas, when I was homeschooling my kids. And truly, having a parent right beside their kids is so, so important. And this can't be overemphasized. Your kids are going to excel merely by the fact that they see that you're interested in what they're doing. And as Christians, we see this as stewardship. Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." And when we tailor learning to our kids, they thrive. Parents aren't just winging it. They're leaning into their God-given potential, and the results speak for themselves. So what about mastery? Well, flexibility actually boosts mastery, and here's where homeschooling shines. If you search through homeschooling stats online, you'll see that homeschooling comes out on top. Parents love the fact that there's flexibility in their schedule and curriculum choices. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and public schools often push through the material, but homeschooling lets kids master a concept before moving on. If your child's struggling in fractions, for example, take an extra week. If your child's flying through biology, let them read ahead, whatever that is. And I loved that if my kids got really interested in something, I would try to arrange a field trip around it, or even just go online and explore in that way. One of my favorite methods that incorporates all learning types and strengths within my children was the unit study method. It ties all of this together. Maybe you're exploring creation through science, art, and the Bible, and even bringing in history. Some people like unschooling, where a child's passion for astronomy can lead into a deep dive that you'd never get in the classroom. Colossians 3:1-17 says to do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the Father through him. And flexibility truly lets us honor that, giving kids time to grasp God's world fully. I know I cherish this ability to have flexibility in my life, and it pays off in understanding, not just in grades. It encouraged my children to find their passions, and this has stayed with them throughout the years. But what if my children wanted to attend higher education, for example, college? If you're new to homeschooling, you may wonder if homeschoolers get into college, and the answer is absolutely. The stats show that about 2/3 graduate from college, outpacing the national average. Colleges like the Ivy Leagues often recruit homeschoolers for their self-discipline and unique perspectives. Today, from what we're seeing on the news, you may want to skip some of the Ivy Leagues and go to some of the other colleges that maybe will align better with your views. But don't worry, your kids are going to be doing great, especially if you're taking some of the standardized tests. Whenever your child goes to college, hopefully somewhere that will encourage their faith, they will shine among their students. And one of the reasons is because they're actually interested in learning. I really believe that homeschooling allows kids to have a passion for learning. I remember my daughter calling me during one of her college years, and she was kind of concerned because she and the teacher were not eye to eye on a lot of the social topics that were out there, and unfortunately the teacher was bringing them into the classroom. And my daughter said, well, I went up to her after class and said, look, if I have different views than you do, is that going to hurt my grade? And truthfully, I was shocked that she had basically the audacity to go up to this teacher and say that. And I wondered if I was her in that situation, if I would have done that. But I have to applaud her because the teacher was taken aback. And especially with, my daughter saying, well, I'll do some extra credit work if you want me to. And the teacher said, no, that wouldn't be necessary. And that, she drilled her on a few more things. And my daughter further cemented, the fact that this teacher thought she was probably, a Christian fanatic. But as it turned out, my daughter did get an A in the class because the teacher really enjoyed having a student that was actually interested in learning, asking a lot of thoughtful questions, and not just trying to be antagonistic in class. So that's just one example of many that I could share with you. But what about those who are not college bound? Well, that gives you some flexibility in your home.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at MediaAngels.com and TheVintageHomeschoolMoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.